Tennyson's The Lady of Shalott shares quite a few similarities with Mariana. The first is we see a woman in isolation who is pining for some sort of energy beyond her immediate environment. Mariana pines in particular for Angelo. The Lady of Shalott pines to get away from her isolation, and at a certain point, Lancelot appears and she pines for him. So both show women who are isolated, and of course, that isolation breeds weariness, sorrow, melancholy. Now, whereas Mariana doesn't seem to do anything but walk around and lament, the Lady of Shalott is an artistic figure. She is a great weaver. So she's on some island, the island of Shalott, which runs near many towered Camelot. And there, as the ships go by and as the city itself hustles and bustles, she sits all by herself in her castle on her island night and day. And what does she do? There she weaves by night and day a magic web with colors gay. She is heard a whisper say, a curse is on her if she stay to look down to Camelot. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. And moving through a mirror clear that hangs before her all the year, shadows of the world appear. There she sees the highway near, winding down to Camelot. There the river eddy whirls, and there the surly village churls, and the red cloaks of the market girls pass onward from Shalott. So what does she do? She doesn't look directly at the world for the patterns that she will weave. She looks at a reflection of the world in a mirror. So she's a certain kind of artist, an artist who is divorced from the physical world, an artist who bases art on shadows, ideas, reveries, fancies. In other words, on sources that, again, are not connected to the empirical world. But after a while, she says, I'm sick of shadows. I'm tired of being the kind of artist who bases images, who bases narratives, who bases, in her case, the patterns of her weaving on shadows, on reflected images. She wants to actually see the world as it is, the actual world, the fleshy world, and perhaps base her art on that. She says at the end of part 2, but in her web she still delights to weave the mirror's sights, for often through the silent nights a funeral with plumes and lights and music went to Camelot. Or when the moon was overhead came two young lovers lately wed. I'm half sick of shadows, said the Lady of Shalott. And then suddenly it erupts into part 3, Lancelot. A bow shot from her bower eaves. See, there's that action, and again, it's phallic. This he shoots into her life like an arrow, and a huge silver bugle hangs from his arm. So he's energy, he's fertile, he's phallic, and she sees him in her mirror. This is part 3 still. His broad clear brow in sunlight glowed, on burnished hooves his warhorse trode. From underneath his helmet flowed his coal black curls as he rode down to Camelot. From the bank and from the river he flashed. There's that language again of energy. He flashed into the crystal mirror, and he's singing in Tiralira. She left the web, she left the loom, she made 3 paces through the room. She saw the water lily bloom, she saw the helmet and the plume. She looked down to Camelot. Out flew the web and floated wide. The mirror cracked from side to side. The curse has come upon me, the Lady of Shalott. So you'll notice the repetition here is part of the repetition that shows up throughout the poem. All the stanzas end with the Shalott. And so that monotony of the stanza endings, of course, reflects the monotony of her life. What breaks into her life, Lancelot, cracks her mirror, literally cracks her vision. So suddenly she can no longer be this escapist artist. She doesn't really want to be anymore because life in all of its vitality has broken in upon her. So she says, all right, it's time to go to the world. It's time to go seek this night. It's time to get out of my world of shadows. So it's as if she's an artist who's deciding to write a different way. And so she gets in her ship and sails to Camelot. And once she reaches the shore, she's dead. And no one knows who she is. Who's this person? Part four. Who is this, and what is here? And in the lighted palace near died the sound of royal cheer. As they crossed themselves for fear, all the knights at Camelot. But Lancelot mused a little space. He said, she has a lovely face. God in his mercy lent her grace, the Lady of Shalott. So it's a sad ending that this powerful artist of a certain kind, when she finally makes her entrance into the actual world, she isn't recognized at all. She's dead, and the man that draws her out doesn't know her at all either, and only says something rather trite. She has a lovely face. Not, oh my gosh, this is the great Lady of Shalott, the great weaver of beautiful patterns that reflect life. Why did she come here? Why did she seek me out? None of that. So the ending is ironic. We might expect this curse to have a kind of high drama for the Lady of Shalott, but as she sails, she simply dies. And when she reaches the shore, she makes no impact whatsoever. So it's really a bleak poem, I would say. You have this model of a certain kind of artist who can create only shadows, and the poem suggests that that's not adequate, that the artist properly should not reflect shadows, but should actually describe what happens in life, the energies of life. But in this case, when the artist tries to do that, she is unequal to that task, and she dies. But even then, she's not recognized as the great artist that she is. Now, this poem reflects a theme that shows up throughout Tennyson. Tennyson's constantly wondering, what's the role of the artist? Should the artist take a social stance like Elizabeth Barrett Browning does? Or should the artist be more contemplative, kind of like Wordsworth was? Tennyson takes over in 1854, Wordsworth is poet laureate, by the way. So we see this vacillation in Tennyson throughout his work. What should the artist be like the Lady of Shalott? Or should the artist try to get out into the world and talk about the strife of the world? Well, here there's a sense that the kind of art that Tennyson favored, this sort of contemplative art, is ultimately impotent for impacting the everyday world. And that the poet who spends too much time doing this kind of art is ultimately unable to take on the other kind of artistic statement with a social conscience. So we see that going on here. Again, we see that other theme that we saw in Mariana, the problem of isolated melancholia, and it's with a woman here as well as in Mariana Moated Grange. And this poem too has the tremendous stylistic effects that we saw in Mariana. That's true of all the Tennyson poems we'll see. But you'll note here that Tennyson does use repetition to good effect, just as he used repetition to good effect in Mariana. The repetition of language suggesting a monotony of experience.